5 years ago, a young boy vanished without a trace while hiking deep in the forest. No one expected that years later, a rescuer would uncover mysterious symbols carved into ancient rocks. Symbols that would unlock secrets beyond imagination and change everything they thought they knew. This is the story of disappearance, discovery, and a bond between a boy and the wilderness that refuses to be forgotten. The morning air was crisp, laced with pine and the faint dampness of early spring. 10-year-old Noah Campbell hiked ahead, his small boots crunching along the dirt trail as he playfully waved his stick like a sword, slashing at invisible foes in the air. Behind him, his father, Mark, kept a steady pace, occasionally glancing at the map in his hand, but mostly watching his son with quiet pride. It was their first father-son hike of the season, a tradition Mark hoped to keep alive for years to come. They were in the Whispering Forest, a place known for its thick canopy, ancient trees, and winding, almost mythical trails that locals often avoided unless they knew the paths well. But Mark had hiked here before. He wasn't worried. The trail twisted around a large rock outcrop and dipped into a narrow ravine filled with tall ferns. Noah was laughing, shouting something about being the king of the mountain, when he turned the corner and disappeared behind the bend. Mark followed seconds later, his heart light, his boots sure. But when he reached the other side, Noah was gone. At first, he thought his son was hiding, playing one of his usual games. "Noah," he called out, his voice calm. No answer. "All right, buddy. You got me. Come on out." Still silence. The trees stood motionless, their branches heavy with silence. Mark's voice began to tremble as he shouted louder, his calls echoing off the canyon walls. He ran up and down the trail, eyes scanning every tree, every bush, his voice breaking now, pleading. Within the hour, he had called 911. By nightfall, emergency search teams were combing the area with dogs, heat sensors, and helicopters circling overhead. Mark refused to leave the trail, even when darkness fell and temperatures dropped. He sat on a mossy boulder, staring into the woods, whispering his son's name over and over again. The next few days were a blur of chaos and disbelief. More than 50 volunteers joined the search, including seasoned hikers, forest rangers, and even tribal trackers from the nearby reservation. They combed every crevice, every cave, even drained a shallow lake nearby. But there were no signs. No torn clothing, no footprints, no trail. It was as if the forest had swallowed Noah whole. Local news reporters descended on Ashgrove, turning the disappearance into a media frenzy. 10-year-old boy vanishes without a trace, the headlines read. Cameras zoomed in on Lauren Campbell, Noah's mother, her tear-streaked face stoic as she clutched a photo of her son. "He's out there," she said firmly to the press, "and I will not stop until we find him." But behind closed doors, things were breaking. Mark blamed himself relentlessly, replaying every second of that morning in his mind. Lauren distanced herself from him, retreating into grief and silent desperation. Rumors began to stir. Some said it was a kidnapping, others whispered about wild animals, even bears. A few older townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the old legends of the forest, the stories of people going in and never coming out. The Whispering Forest had always had a strange aura around it. Some said it had a will of its own. Weeks passed. The official search ended after 31 days, though unofficial ones continued for months. Memorials were held. The trail Noah vanished on was closed to hikers. His room at home remained untouched, a quiet shrine of model airplanes, comic books, and hand-drawn pictures of wolves and forests. But Lauren never gave up. She started a foundation in Noah's name, raising money to support search efforts for other missing children. And once a year, on the same day, she returned to the forest with a single red balloon and let it drift up into the trees, whispering his name like a prayer. Somewhere deep inside, she knew it wasn't over. Far from the roads and maps, beyond where the trail ends and the trees grow too thick to walk, something moved through the brush, quiet, cautious. And in the stillness, the forest held its secret. 5 long years had passed since the morning Noah vanished. The world outside moved on. People changed jobs, Children grew older, lives quietly shifted, but for the Campbell family, time remained frozen. Inside their modest Ash Grove home, the living room still displayed the same family photo from before the hike. Mark, Lauren, and Noah smiling under the summer sun, unaware of what fate had in store. Dust gathered on the frame, but neither parent dared to move it. It was a snapshot of the last moment their world had been whole. Mark and Lauren no longer lived under the same roof. Grief had carved a deep canyon between them, too wide to cross with words or shared pain. Mark had moved into a small cabin on the outskirts of town, close to the forest. He worked odd jobs, rarely spoke, and spent weekends alone, walking old trails with a weathered backpack and a GPS tracker clipped to his jacket. He had become obsessed with mapping every inch of the Whispering Forest, convinced that somewhere, in some forgotten crevice or unmarked ridge, there was a clue. Something he had missed. Something the others had overlooked. Lauren, on the other hand, had turned her pain into purpose. The Noah Campbell Foundation had grown into a respected nonprofit, helping families across the state search for their missing loved ones. Her days were filled with interviews, travel, and endless fundraising galas. But when the cameras stopped flashing and the applause faded, she would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, whispering the same question over and over. "Where are you, Noah?" The townspeople still remembered. Ash Grove wasn't a big place, and Noah's story had left a scar on its heart. Every time a child wandered off at the park, or a hiker took longer than expected to return, whispers of the forest came back. Some believed the boy had been taken by a predator. Others clung to darker stories, ones about the woods being alive, of things hiding deep within, watching, of trails that shifted like mazes and shadows that moved even when the wind stood still. And yet, despite the silence, despite the years of emptiness and unanswered prayers, something unexplainable lingered. Every year on the anniversary of Noah's disappearance, Mark would place a small wooden carving at the edge of the trail, each one shaped like something his son had loved: a howling wolf, a soaring hawk, a treehouse with crooked steps. He never told anyone why, but each time he did, he felt a strange stillness in the air, as if the forest were listening. One winter, a volunteer group clearing debris from storm-damaged areas deep in the forest found one of the carvings hanging from a tree branch, miles away from where Mark had placed it. No tracks, no signs of human movement, just the carving, perfectly untouched. When Mark was told, he drove out in silence and retrieved it, fingers trembling. It was a hawk. Noah had once said he wanted to fly one day, fly far away, past the clouds, past the noise, where nothing could touch him. Despite the silence, the case was never officially closed. Detective Reed, the original investigator, had retired, but he kept Noah's file in his personal drawer at home. Something about that boy, he'd say to friends over coffee. It never felt finished. Then, 5 years to the day since the disappearance, something strange happened. A hiker, young, experienced, and part of a local rescue unit, radioed in an unusual discovery. He had ventured deeper than most dared to go, beyond where the trails faded into wild undergrowth. There, on the face of a granite cliff, were markings etched into the rock with precision, purpose, and age. Not animal scratches, not graffiti. Symbols. Strange, spiraled, interlocking patterns. None of them recognizable, but undeniably crafted. The hiker snapped photos, tagged the location, and sent them to his team. He didn't know why, but standing before that stone, he felt something cold slide down his spine. A whisper, maybe, or just the wind. But then he saw something else, lying in the dirt below the symbols. A small toy compass, the kind a child might carry on an adventure. It had a name scratched faintly on the back: Noah. The moment Mark received the call from the rescue team coordinator, his world seemed to tilt. He stood frozen in his cabin doorway, holding his phone to his ear as the voice on the other end described what the hiker had found: strange, spiral-like symbols etched into rock, deep in the uncharted section of the Whispering Forest. But it wasn't the symbols that stopped Mark's breath. It was the toy compass. "We think it might be connected to the Campbell case," the voice had said gently. "We found a name on it. Noah. Mark didn't remember grabbing his keys. Didn't remember locking the cabin door. All he knew was the thunder in his chest as he drove toward the ranger station, his knuckles white against the steering wheel, headlights slicing through fog. He hadn't felt this alive or this terrified since the day Noah disappeared. The forest had been silent for 5 years, and now suddenly it was speaking. When he arrived, the young rescuer, Jake Porter, met him outside the station. He was no older than 25, with mud-streaked boots and a nervous energy in his eyes. He handed Mark a Ziploc bag with a compass inside. The moment Mark saw it, something in him broke. It was small, cracked near the rim, and its needle was slightly bent. But it was unmistakably Noah's. Mark had given it to him on his 8th birthday, a tiny adventure gift, the kind of thing that made a boy feel like an explorer. Always know where you're going, Mark had told him back then. He ran his fingers across the back, feeling the faint scratches where Noah had etched his name with a safety pin. Jake hesitated before showing him the photos. I don't know what to make of these, he said, but they didn't feel normal. Mark's eyes scanned the images. The rock face was massive, covered in strange symbols, some circular, others jagged, all interconnected like a language lost to time. They weren't random. They were purposeful. Old, yes, but sharp and deliberate. There were no footprints, no tools nearby, no explanation. Just the compass. And those markings. I found it just beneath the largest symbol, Jake added, pointing to a close-up shot. It looked like it had been placed there. Mark stared at the screen, his heart thudding louder with each second. For the first time in 5 years, something had shifted. Something tangible. The compass wasn't just a remnant, it was a message. And the symbols? They felt less like artwork and more like a key. Jake leaned closer, lowering his voice. I've hiked this forest 100 times. I know its sounds, its smells, its moods. But when I stood there in front of that rock, I swear there was something watching me. I couldn't see it, but I felt it. The silence wasn't empty. It was listening. Mark didn't laugh, didn't dismiss him. He knew exactly what Jake meant. The forest had always had a presence, a breath. Now it was exhaling after years of holding something in. Word spread quickly through town. Reporters tried to descend again, but the rangers kept the location secret. Only a few trusted people were allowed to see the rock in person, Mark among them. When he finally stood before it days later, the sheer size of the carvings overwhelmed him. They pulsed with eerie beauty, like veins etched into the earth's surface. But what struck him most wasn't just the strangeness of the symbols. It was the familiar line scratched faintly into the bottom right corner, almost like a child's attempt to copy what they'd seen. It looked like a wolf. Noah loved wolves. He used to draw them constantly. Howling wolves, running wolves, even wolves with wings. His carving, it was rough, small, but it was his. Mark could feel it. He stepped closer to the rock, ignoring the whispers of the wind in the trees. He pressed his palm to the surface, cold and damp, and closed his eyes. Noah, he whispered, if you're out there, I'm listening. And the forest, impossibly, seemed to whisper back. Mark stood before the massive stone, its surface pulsing with mystery under the filtered sunlight that slipped through the dense canopy above. The strange symbols weren't just random. They formed something more. He couldn't see it clearly at first, but as his eyes adjusted and he stepped back, a pattern began to emerge. Interlocking shapes, curves folding into lines. It wasn't just a wall of cryptic symbols. It was a map. He crouched down slowly, eyes scanning every detail. And that's when he noticed the compass wasn't just placed beneath the carving by chance. It had been lined up precisely beneath a symbol resembling a mountain peak, almost like it had been used to mark a trailhead. Back at the ranger station, Mark sat with the printed photos, a flashlight in one hand and a pencil in the other. He traced the symbols over and over, trying to make sense of the configuration. It wasn't until he compared the photos with a topographical map of Whispering Forest that something clicked. A ridge here, a bend in a river there. He realized that parts of the carving matched the actual terrain. Distorted, yes, but unmistakable. He was looking at an ancient overlay of the forest itself. Jake joined him, eyebrows raised. You really think this is a map? I don't think, Mark said without looking up. I know. Together, they worked into the night, cross-referencing the symbols with every known landmark in the area. Several points matched marked trails and ridgelines, but others led to nowhere, or rather, to areas that weren't supposed to exist. Jake, flipping through his unit's older satellite data, found patches of forest that showed subtle inconsistencies, shadows that shifted unnaturally between photos, indentations that didn't line up with known terrain features. "There's something here," he murmured, "and it's been here for a long time." Mark circled 3 specific points on the copied map, each corresponding to a cluster of the strangest symbols, including the wolf-like figure Noah had scratched into the stone. He didn't say it aloud, but in his gut, he believed Noah had left that mark himself. He believed his son had stood here once, had touched this same rock, and had seen something no one else had. Maybe even followed the symbols deeper into the forest. The thought sent a chill down his spine. With the help of a trusted ranger named Elena, they decided to conduct a quiet expedition, just the 3 of them. They couldn't risk attracting public attention. The forest was still under restricted access from the earlier media frenzy, and Mark didn't want a crowd to trample through something so sacred. They packed gear, secured emergency radios, and programmed GPS points based on the symbol alignments. The first destination was a hollow marked by what looked like a twisted spiral, a design unlike any they'd seen before. As they trekked deeper into the forest, something changed. The air felt heavier, but not in a dangerous way. It was more like walking into a forgotten room, full of echoes, memories, and something intangible humming in the roots. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to quiet around them. No birds, no rustling. Even their boots seemed muffled against the earth. It was Elena who spotted the second set of markings, etched into the base of an ancient cedar, nearly hidden beneath layers of moss, were faded versions of the same symbols they'd found on the stone wall. The same spiral, the same wolf. But below them was something new, an arrow, curved upward, pointing toward a narrow path hidden between 2 jagged rocks. "It's not on any map," Jake whispered. "No," Mark replied, heart pounding. "But it's on his." As the 3 exchanged silent looks, a realization settled over them. Someone, or something, had left these signs deliberately. They weren't just symbols. They were instructions, a breadcrumb trail. And now, 5 years later, the trail was active again. For the first time in half a decade, Mark felt something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. The narrow trail between the rocks looked barely wide enough for a human to slip through. Thick branches clawed at the sides, and brambles crept like fingers across the entrance, as if nature itself were trying to seal off the path. Mark pushed aside the overgrowth, stepping cautiously into the passage. Behind him, Jake and Elena followed in single file, flashlights ready, eyes sharp. The forest shifted almost immediately. It wasn't just darker, it was quieter, oppressively so. The sounds of the wind, the distant birds, the rustle of trees, all of it fell away as if muted by some unseen force. The deeper they moved into this hidden vein of the forest, the more it felt like they were slipping into another world altogether. The air grew damp and earthy, thick with the scent of moss and decay. And beneath it all, a strange hum, so low it bordered on inaudible, seemed to tremble in their bones. After 20 minutes of careful descent, the trail opened into a basin, overgrown but clearly unnatural in formation. Trees circled it like sentinels, twisted and leaning inward, as if drawn toward the center. At the very heart of the basin was a large, flat stone slab, weathered, cracked, and partially sunken into the earth. It was surrounded by smaller stones arranged in a spiral. Mark's breath caught. This matched one of the symbols on the map exactly. Elena crouched beside the slab, brushing away a layer of damp leaves. "There's something carved here," she whispered, voice hushed by instinct more than caution. Mark knelt beside her. The carvings were faint, but there, just visible beneath the moss, was the same wolf figure again. And next to it, new lines like tiny stick figures positioned in odd, angular postures. Some were upright. Others appeared fallen. Jake circled the area slowly. Whatever this is, someone went to great lengths to hide it. No hiker stumbles onto a place like this by accident. Mark said nothing, but in his chest, a terrible pressure was building. He touched the wolf carving again, and something in the atmosphere shifted. A breeze whispered through the trees, not gentle, but sharp, purposeful, as though carrying a message too old for words. Suddenly, Elena stiffened. "Did you hear that?" All three of them froze. There was again a sound, faint, rhythmic. Not quite footsteps, not quite rustling, but movement, from somewhere deeper in the woods beyond the stone circle. Mark rose to his feet, heart thudding. He looked toward the trees where the sound had come from, but saw only darkness. "We're being watched," Jake muttered. Mark's instincts screamed at him to listen, to turn back, to leave this place undisturbed. But another voice, one stronger, deeper, full of aching memory, kept whispering. Noah was here. "We need to keep going," Mark said quietly. "Whatever's ahead, this is just the beginning." They marked the location with GPS, took photos, and pressed on. A narrow path branched off from the basin's far edge, just barely visible through the brush. As they advanced, the trees grew older, massive trunks with bark like armor, roots that pulsed with damp life. Strange growths clung to their sides, fungi in colors Mark had never seen before. Purples that shimmered in the dim light, greens that seemed to breathe. And then came the stone steps. They descended suddenly, carved into the side of a slope hidden by vines and mist. No natural trail explained their existence. No ranger map showed anything here, but someone had carved them long ago. They spiraled downward, deeper into the earth, into a crevice where the forest sounds disappeared entirely. As they stepped onto the first stone, Mark paused. He turned and looked back toward the forest they'd left behind. The world above was silent. The world below waited. With one final glance at the wolf symbol, now etched into his mind, he took the first step down, heart heavy with fear, hope, and the unshakable sense that he was following Noah's path. Step for step, shadow for shadow. Whatever lay below had been waiting for them. And now, after 5 years of silence, the forest had opened its mouth. The descent was suffocating. Each step down the worn stone staircase drew the trio deeper into silence, into shadow, into a place that felt untouched by time. The air grew heavier, colder, and tinged with the scent of damp earth and ancient stone. Moss clung to the walls, glowing faintly in the dark like bioluminescent veins pulsing beneath the surface of the world. Mark kept his hand against the cold rock to steady himself as the beam of his flashlight cut through the gloom. The stairs curved sharply, vanishing into blackness below. Somewhere beneath them, an underground chamber waited, one they hadn't expected, one that wasn't on any map or geological survey. And as they descended, something strange began to happen. They began to hear voices. At first, it was nothing more than a feeling, like breath brushing against the back of Mark's neck, or the whisper of wind through leaves. But there was no wind down here, no movement of air. Then the whispers sharpened, distinct syllables, murmurs in a language that didn't belong to any human tongue. It was like listening to a memory, faint, scattered fragments drifting on the edge of hearing. Elena stopped. "Did you hear that?" Jake didn't answer right away. He stood perfectly still, brow furrowed, head tilted slightly as if listening to something far away. Then he said softly, a child's voice. Mark's heart nearly stopped. He gripped the railing carved into the stone and leaned forward. The voices weren't loud, but they were clearer now, layered murmurs echoing off the walls. One sounded like a boy, no older than 10. He wasn't crying. He was humming. A tune, light and simple, rising and falling like something remembered from a lullaby. "That's Noah's song," Mark whispered, throat tightening. "I used to sing it to him when he was little." The others exchanged a glance, but said nothing. As they reached the bottom of the staircase, they stepped into a vast subterranean chamber. Their flashlights swept across the space, revealing towering stone pillars wrapped in vines, and walls covered in the same symbols they had seen on the rock above. The wolf, the spiral, the figures. But here, they were larger, more detailed, etched deep into the stone as if chiseled by countless hands over time. In the center of the chamber lay a flat stone platform. On it rested something that didn't belong, something modern. A child's backpack, faded blue, with a frayed strap and a tiny iron-on patch shaped like a rocket ship. Mark stumbled forward and fell to his knees beside it, his hands trembling. He opened the zipper. Inside were things frozen in time. A crushed juice box, a crumpled note written in a child's handwriting, and a photo, faded but unmistakable. Mark, his wife Laura, and Noah, smiling beneath a tree during a summer picnic. Elena knelt beside him, her voice low. "There's no dust. This hasn't been here long." Mark looked up, blinking against the sting in his eyes. He was here. He's still here. Somewhere. Then came a sudden tremor. A faint vibration ran through the floor, soft, rhythmic. Not an earthquake. It felt almost like breathing. The walls seemed to hum with it, the symbols glowing faintly now, their outlines shifting as if alive. The humming turned into a chorus of overlapping whispers. Dozens of voices. Hundreds. Some speaking, others chanting. And beneath it all, one voice rose above the rest. Mark turned slowly, flashlight trembling in his hand. A shadow moved between the pillars, small, fleeting, but distinctly human-shaped. "Noah," he called out, voice hoarse with desperation. The shadow paused, then vanished. Jake raised his radio to call for backup, but the signal was nothing but static. Mark stood there, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to run, but something stronger rooted him to the floor. Hope. The forest had hidden his son, but it was no longer trying to keep him away. It was inviting him in. The air inside the chamber was charged with something ancient, something that didn't belong in a rational world. Mark stood frozen beside Noah's backpack, the photo still trembling in his hand. The whispers had faded now, replaced by a deep, echoing silence that felt thicker than stone. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the presence of something watching. Jake circled the chamber with slow, careful steps, flashlight gliding across the walls. "These symbols aren't random," he said. "They're in sequences, repeated patterns, almost like a language. But not one I've ever seen." Elena was crouched beside a pillar, tracing the edge of one of the spiral carvings with her fingers. Her brow furrowed. "It's like a story told in stone. Look, here's the wolf again. And the figures. Some are kneeling, others reaching upward." She moved the beam of her flashlight lower. "And here, it looks like they're disappearing into the ground." Mark rose slowly, following her gaze. The carvings told a tale, not with words, but with shape and form. A people, ancient and connected to the forest, worshipping something beneath the earth. The wolf, the spiral, the fallen ones. It wasn't just decoration. It was history, and it hinted at something terrifying. "Maybe this was never just a forest," Mark said quietly. "Maybe it's been protecting something all along." They explored deeper into the underground structure, guided by instinct more than reason. The walls narrowed, giving way to corridors that bent at impossible angles. Roots dangled from the ceiling like veins, pulsing faintly, as though the earth itself was alive and breathing around them. Every few steps, the same symbols reappeared, growing more elaborate. One symbol in particular began to dominate, an eye enclosed within the spiral. They entered a smaller chamber. This one felt different, personal. The walls were covered in drawings, crude, childlike, but unmistakably recent. Stick figures, trees, a wolf, and always the spiral. Elena gasped. These were drawn with crayons. There was a makeshift bed of moss in the corner, a chewed-up flashlight, a few empty snack wrappers, signs of someone surviving here, recently. Mark knelt beside the moss, fingers trembling as he brushed aside leaves. There, carved into the stone wall with what looked like the edge of a rock, were the letters. An OH. He pressed his palm against it, swallowing hard. His son had been here. Not 5 years ago, recently. Maybe even days ago. "I don't understand," Jake muttered. "How does a child survive in a place like this for so long?" Mark's voice was barely audible. He didn't survive alone. They turned at once, hearing it again. The humming. Closer now. And footsteps, Not human. Heavy. Slow. Intentional. Then silence. The team raised their flashlights. The corridor behind them was empty, but the presence remained, thick and pulsing, like a heartbeat beneath their feet. "We need to get out," Jake whispered. "This place is alive. It's watching us." Mark hesitated. Every instinct told him Jake was right, but something else whispered to him. Not the eerie voices from the walls, but something softer, deeper, familiar. A memory surfaced, Noah as a toddler, chasing fireflies in the yard, stopping suddenly and looking back at him. "Daddy," he had whispered, pointing toward the woods. "There's something in the trees. It wants to play." Back then, Mark had thought it was just imagination, a child's dream. But what if Noah had always heard something, felt something calling to him? What if he'd followed it? "We're close," Mark said, eyes scanning the symbols. "This isn't just a place of hiding. It's a threshold," and Noah crossed it. Elena looked at him, fear and awe in her eyes. "Into what?" Mark turned back toward the narrow passage, the whispering now rising again like a tide returning to shore. "I think we're about to find out." The narrow passageway twisted sharply, the walls closing in as the air grew colder and heavier. Mark's flashlight flickered for a moment, casting long shadows that danced eerily against the carved stone. Elena's breath came in shallow gasps, and Jake's steps grew slower, as though the tunnel itself was resisting their presence. Yet despite the creeping dread, Mark felt a strange pull, an almost magnetic force drawing him forward, deeper into the unknown. After what felt like an eternity, the corridor opened abruptly into a vast chamber, much larger than any of them had expected. The ceiling soared high above, lost in darkness. The walls were covered with the ancient symbols, wolves, spirals, eyes, all glowing faintly, pulsing with an otherworldly light that seemed to seep from the very stone. The floor was uneven, scattered with broken rocks and tangled roots, but at its center stood a pedestal made of smooth, black granite. Mark approached cautiously, heart pounding in his chest. On the pedestal lay a small, intricately carved wooden box. Its surface was adorned with the same spiral pattern that had haunted their journey, now unmistakable and vibrant, as if alive. The box seemed to hum with a low, resonant energy that vibrated through Mark's fingertips as he reached out. Before he could touch it, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice clear and haunting, speaking a language that stirred something deep inside him. The whispers returned, swirling around them like a storm of shadows and light. "It's a key," Elena said, eyes wide with disbelief. "To what? I don't know, but it's important. Maybe it's what's been calling Noah here." Jake scanned the room, his hand never leaving his radio. "We're not alone," he warned. "Something's watching." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A hidden door at the far end of the chamber slid open with a grinding noise, revealing a narrow stairwell descending even deeper. The trio exchanged nervous glances, knowing that whatever secrets lay ahead were no longer just stories carved in stone. They were real and waiting for them to uncover. Mark took a deep breath, clutching the wooden box. "Noah's here, and if we want to find him, we have to follow." They stepped onto the stairs, leaving the faint glow of the symbols behind as darkness swallowed them whole. The air grew damp and cold, each step echoing loudly in the silence. The whispers had quieted, replaced by an oppressive stillness that made their skin crawl. At the bottom of the stairwell, the passage opened into a cavern unlike anything Mark had ever seen. Bioluminescent fungi illuminated the space with a soft, ethereal glow, revealing ancient murals painted on the walls, depictions of a boy, a wolf, and a spiraling gateway. The images told a story of a pact between man and nature, a bond forged through sacrifice and trust. Elena ran her fingers over the mural, tracing the outline of the boy's face. "This isn't just legend," she whispered. "This is real. Noah may be part of this now." Mark's chest tightened. The thought of his son trapped in this mysterious realm between worlds was almost unbearable. But the hope of finding him alive, of bringing him home, pushed him onward. As they ventured deeper, The cavern opened into a crystal-clear underground lake. The water shimmered under their flashlight beams, reflecting the intricate patterns carved into the ceiling above. At the lake's edge, half buried in the sand, lay a small pair of worn sneakers, too small for anyone but a child. Mark dropped to his knees, tears stinging his eyes. "Noah," he whispered, "you're here." The forest had kept its secret, but now, with every step they took, that secret was unraveling. And Mark knew this was only the beginning. The discovery of the small sneakers sent a shockwave through Mark's chest, proof that Noah had been here, somewhere beyond the reach of the outside world. But as their flashlights scanned the shimmering lake's edge, a chilling realization settled over them. There was no clear way forward. The cavern ended abruptly in water, its surface smooth and undisturbed, reflecting the faint glow from the glowing fungi above. It was beautiful and eerie all at once, like the threshold between two worlds. "We're trapped," Jake muttered, scanning the rocky walls with a frown. No bridge, no boat, just this endless water. Elena knelt beside the sneakers, her eyes lingering on the worn laces. Noah must have crossed this somehow. Maybe there's a hidden path beneath the water. Mark swallowed hard. Or maybe this lake isn't just water. Maybe it's the gateway the symbols talked about. The spiral, the eye, the wolf. His voice barely above a whisper, he added, "Noah followed that path. And so must we." Jake shook his head, skepticism mingling with worry. "We don't even know what's on the other side." But Mark's resolve was unshakable. 5 years of uncertainty, grief, and searching had brought them to this moment. They had come too far to turn back now. They carefully explored the rocky shoreline, looking for any sign of a hidden passage or submerged entrance. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, reflecting off the water's surface and revealing strange, faint markings on the stones beneath. The symbols glowed faintly beneath the water, forming a pattern that resembled a spiral staircase descending into the depths. Elena's voice trembled. "It's like the symbols are guiding us." Jake tested the water cautiously with a stick. It was surprisingly warm, almost inviting. But the darkness beneath was thick, concealing whatever lay below. Mark found a long, narrow stone slab partially submerged near the shore. With some effort, they managed to shift it aside, revealing a small opening just large enough for a person to crawl through. The air that came from the tunnel beyond was damp and cool, carrying a faint, earthy scent. "This must be it," Mark said, determination hardening his tone. "This is the lost path." One by one, they squeezed into the narrow tunnel, flashlights piercing the darkness. The passage was tight and winding, water dripping from the ceiling and pooling beneath their feet. Every step echoed eerily, the sounds amplified by the stone walls. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel widened into a series of caverns connected by narrow bridges and natural stone arches. Strange carvings lined the walls. Animals, spirals, eyes, all telling stories of the ancient forest and its guardians. The deeper they went, the more surreal the environment became. Luminous plants pulsed softly, strange sounds filled the air, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Mark's thoughts drifted to Noah, his son, lost to this labyrinthine world. Was he alive? Was he trapped or free? Was he waiting for rescue? Or had he become part of the forest's mystery? Suddenly, a soft glow appeared ahead, beckoning them forward. It was the faint outline of a door, covered in moss and vines, inscribed with the same spiral symbol. The air hummed with energy as they approached. Mark reached out, pressing his palm to the cool stone. The door slid open silently, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. Inside, a small figure stood, shadowed and still. "Noah!" Mark's voice cracked with emotion as he stepped forward, tears blurring his vision. The figure turned slowly, eyes wide and filled with wonder. A smile broke across the boy's face, the same smile Mark had longed to see for 5 long years. "Dad," Noah whispered, his voice trembling but unmistakably real. The lost path had led them home. Mark's heart pounded so fiercely he thought it might burst. After 5 years of endless searching, false leads, and silent nights haunted by the question of where Noah was, the impossible was finally unfolding before his eyes. The small figure standing in the golden chamber was unmistakably his son, no longer a lost boy in the forest shadows, but alive and real, smiling with a warmth Mark had longed to feel again. "Noah," Mark whispered, his voice breaking. He took a tentative step forward, unsure if this moment was a dream or finally a miracle come true. The boy's eyes locked onto his father's, shining with recognition and something deeper. Hope, relief, a quiet joy that transcended all the pain of the past years. The room was quiet except for the soft sound of their breaths and the faint hum of the ancient stones around them. Elena and Jake stood silently behind Mark, watching the reunion with awe and respect. This was the reason they had endured the cold tunnels, the strange symbols, and the unrelenting darkness. Mark reached out slowly, trembling, and pulled Noah into a tight embrace. The boy's small arms wrapped around his father's neck, clutching him as though never wanting to let go. Tears streamed freely down Mark's face as he held his son, feeling the solidity of his presence, the proof that his child had survived against all odds. "Where have you been?" Mark asked, his voice thick with emotion. "We've been looking for you every day. 5 years. How did you survive?" Noah pulled back slightly, eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and strength. "I was lost, Dad, but I wasn't alone. The forest, it protected me. It showed me things, how to live here, how to listen to the symbols. They're not just carvings. They're a language." Elena stepped forward gently. "What symbols, Noah? What do they mean?" Noah looked at the glowing carvings on the chamber walls and began to explain. "They're stories, warnings, guides. The spirals are paths, the wolves are guardians, and the eyes watch over those who respect the forest. The forest is alive, and it chooses who to protect." Jake nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "So the forest kept you safe all these years?" "Yes," Noah said quietly. "But I've waited for you. I knew you'd find me." Mark's heart ached at his son's words. Years of loneliness and courage etched into a child's voice. "We're here now, Noah. You're safe. We're going home." The boy smiled, hope blossoming. "Home. I remember that word." Together, they began to retrace their steps back through the hidden passage, the mysterious cavern, and the lost path. Mark held Noah's hand tightly, unwilling to lose him again. Elena and Jake followed closely, their flashlights lighting the way out. The journey back was filled with stories. Noah spoke of the forest's magic, the strange creatures he'd encountered, and the lessons learned from the symbols. Mark listened, absorbing every word, every detail that connected his son to this mysterious world. Outside, dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky with soft pinks and golds. As they emerged from the forest, Mark's heart swelled with gratitude and relief. Noah's disappearance, once a painful mystery, had finally come full circle. The search was over, but the journey was just beginning. Returning to the edge of the forest, Mark felt a whirlwind of emotions. Relief, joy, but also a deep curiosity about the strange world that had kept Noah safe all these years. The boy's stories about the symbols and the forest's protection tugged at his mind, urging him to understand the ancient mystery that had shaped this unbelievable rescue. Once safely back in town, Mark, Elena, and Jake agreed that their journey was far from over. Noah's survival was miraculous, but the secrets of the symbols carved into the rocks still demanded answers. What was the origin of these mysterious markings? Why had the forest chosen Noah? And what role did the symbols play in this hidden world? Mark dedicated himself to research, poring over local legends, old maps, and journals from explorers who had ventured near the forest centuries ago. He discovered references to an ancient tribe believed to have vanished, leaving behind symbols that were said to guard a sacred pact between humans and nature. These markings were rumored to hold the power to guide, protect, and even transform those who understood their meaning. Elena, with her background in archaeology and linguistics, helped decipher the symbol's significance. She theorized that the carvings were more than mere art. They were a form of communication, a complex language designed to connect the physical world with the spiritual realm of the forest. The spirals represented cycles of life. The wolves symbolized guardianship and loyalty, and the eyes were watchers, protectors of the sacred balance. Jake, ever the pragmatist, was fascinated by the survival skills Noah must have developed. He helped Noah adjust to life outside the forest while also training to navigate the challenging terrain. The trio began planning another expedition, this time armed with knowledge and respect for the forest's mysteries. Noah's own memories were fragmented, but growing clearer each day. He recalled moments of fear and wonder, times when the forest seemed to speak directly to him. He spoke of a glowing spiral that had appeared on a rock near the lake, a portal of sorts that connected the worlds. Mark realized the forest wasn't just a place, but a living entity with its own rules and guardians. The symbols were a key, both a guide and a warning. If understood correctly, they could unlock the forest's secrets and ensure safety. Misinterpreted, they could lead to danger or disappearance. The community, once skeptical and mournful, began to rally around Noah's return. The story spread, inspiring hope and wonder. Yet Mark knew the true journey was inward, unraveling the mystery of the symbols, the forest, and what it truly meant to be chosen. Late one evening, as Mark studied an ancient map spread across his desk, he noticed something startling. The symbols etched on the map matched perfectly with those they had seen in the cavern. A hidden network of pathways, caves, and sacred sites was revealed, connecting far beyond the forest's edge. Elena's voice echoed in his memory. "This is just the beginning, Mark. The forest has many secrets yet to reveal." And with that, Mark understood their adventure was far from over. The boy who vanished during a hike had returned, but the mystery of the forest and its ancient symbols promised a new story, a story of discovery, guardianship, and the bond between man and nature that transcended time itself. With renewed determination, Mark, Elena, and Jake began an intensive study of the strange symbols that had guided them to Noah. They collected photographs, sketches, and notes from the cavern, the hidden tunnels, and the surrounding forest. Each symbol seemed to hold layers of meaning, woven into an ancient code that had protected the forest for centuries. Elena took the lead in decoding the intricate carvings. She discovered that the symbols were not random. They formed a deliberate narrative, an ancient story passed down by the indigenous people who had once lived in harmony with the forest. These symbols conveyed lessons about respect, balance, and the sacred connection between humans and nature. The spiral was central, a symbol representing life's cyclical nature, growth, and transformation. The eye was the guardian, watching for those who honored the forest's rules. The wolves represented loyalty and protection, fierce guardians that defended the sacred places. Together, these symbols formed a language of the forest, guiding those who sought to understand its mysteries. Noah listened intently, eager to reconnect with this ancient wisdom. Although he had lived within the forest's embrace for years, learning its secrets through instinct and survival, now he could finally put words and meaning to the symbols that had shaped his existence. As the days passed, the team uncovered more symbols in unexpected places, hidden carvings on ancient trees, faint markings on boulders, and even patterns in the arrangement of glowing fungi. These discoveries suggested the forest was a living archive, a map to a hidden world where nature and spirit intertwined. Mark realized that understanding these symbols was more than academic. It was a key to protecting Noah and others like him. The forest's magic was fragile, dependent on the respect and balance between humans and the environment. Any disruption could unravel the protection it offered. One evening, Elena uncovered an old manuscript in the town's historical society archives. It described a ritual performed by the ancient tribe to honor the forest guardians, invoking the power of the symbols to maintain harmony. The ritual had been lost over time, but the manuscript hinted that rediscovering it could unlock deeper understanding and perhaps strengthen the bond between man and nature. Inspired, Mark and his team prepared to venture back into the forest to perform the ritual, hoping it would reveal more truths and secure Noah's safety. As they planned their next expedition, a sense of awe and responsibility settled over them. They were no longer just rescuers. They were now custodians of an ancient legacy. The forest awaited, its secrets patiently poised to reveal themselves to those willing to listen. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the ancient trees, Mark, Elena, Jake, and Noah stood at the edge of the forest once more, ready to undertake the ritual described in the old manuscript. The air was thick with anticipation and reverence. This was more than a simple ceremony. It was an act of reconnection with the forest spirit and its ancient guardians. Elena carefully laid out the ritual items: small wooden carvings, stones etched with symbols matching those from the cavern, and a bundle of fragrant herbs. The group formed a circle around a clearing where the largest spiral symbol was etched into the earth, barely visible under moss and fallen leaves. Mark felt a chill, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Noah, now more confident and curious than ever, helped Elena recite the ancient words. His voice, young but steady, echoed softly through the trees. The others joined in, their voices blending with the natural sounds around them: the rustling leaves, distant bird calls, and the gentle whisper of the wind. As the final words were spoken, a subtle change swept over the clearing. The spiral on the ground began to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The carved stones shimmered with a soft light, and the air seemed charged with energy. Mark's heart raced. This was no ordinary ritual. It was a bridge between worlds, a renewal of the sacred pact between humanity and nature. Suddenly, a gentle glow illuminated the symbols carved on the nearby rocks. The eyes in the carvings seemed to open, watching over them, while faint shapes resembling wolves appeared among the trees, their presence protective and silent. Noah smiled, feeling the forest's power resonate within him. "It's like the forest is alive," he whispered. "It's welcoming us back." Elena nodded. The ritual worked. "It's a sign the ancient guardians accept us. This bond means we must protect the forest as much as it has protected Noah." Mark looked around, understanding now the true significance of their journey. The forest was not just a place to survive, it was a sacred entity demanding respect and care. The symbols were a reminder that humans and nature were intertwined, their fates linked through time. As the light faded and the ritual concluded, the group felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had not only uncovered a secret, but had rekindled an ancient relationship. Noah's survival was a testament to the forest's mercy, but it also called for stewardship, a promise to honor and protect the delicate balance. The forest whispered around them, alive and watchful. Mark knew their lives had changed forever. The mystery of the symbols was no longer just a puzzle to solve, but a living legacy to carry forward. In the days following the ritual, a new clarity settled over Mark, Elena, Jake, and Noah. The forest secrets were no longer just hidden mysteries. They had become a living, breathing connection between past and present, human and nature. Their bond with the ancient guardians symbolized more than survival. It was a profound responsibility to protect and preserve. Mark found himself reflecting on the boy who had vanished all those years ago. Noah was not just a lost child found. He was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope and renewal. His survival had challenged the community's beliefs, awakening a respect for the forest's power that had long been forgotten. Elena's research deepened, combining her linguistic knowledge with newfound insights from the ritual. She documented the symbols, the language of the forest, and their meanings, hoping to preserve this wisdom for future generations. She envisioned creating a guide to help others understand and respect the ancient pact. Jake, whose pragmatic nature had once doubted the forest's mysticism, now embraced the spiritual connection. He saw firsthand how the natural world had protected Noah and how the symbols guided their steps. His survival training sessions with Noah evolved into lessons about harmony and respect, blending practical skills with reverence for the environment. Noah, growing stronger and more confident, felt at peace with his dual existence. The forest had been his home, his protector, and now, with the support of his new family, he was ready to reintegrate into the world. Yet, he carried the forest's wisdom within him, a guardian of its ancient secrets. Together, the group pledged to honor the forest's legacy. They would protect the land, educate the community, and ensure the symbol's meanings were never lost again. The boy who vanished during a hike had returned, bringing with him a message of hope, respect, and the enduring power of nature. As the sun rose over the forest canopy, Mark stood silently at the edge, feeling the wind whisper through the trees. The forest was alive, watching, waiting, and now, so were they, ready to protect its sacred balance for generations to come. After the ritual and the deep understanding they had gained, life slowly started to settle into a new rhythm for Mark, Noah, Elena, and Jake. The forest, once a place of fear and mystery, was now a symbol of hope, healing, and connection. Noah's reintegration into society was a delicate process, but surrounded by the support of his new family and the community's growing respect for the forest, he began to flourish. Mark felt a profound sense of fulfillment. What had started as a rescue mission had blossomed into something far greater, a journey of discovery that had transformed lives and renewed the bond between humans and nature. He took on the role of an advocate, speaking at community events about the importance of preserving the forest and respecting its ancient secrets. Elena continued her research, publishing articles and organizing workshops to educate people on the symbols and their meanings. Her work sparked curiosity and reverence among locals and scholars alike. She often said that the forest had become a living classroom, teaching lessons that modern society desperately needed. Jake, always practical and grounded, found a new purpose in conservation efforts. He helped organize patrols to monitor the forest, ensuring its protection from harm and educating hikers on how to honor the sacred land. His respect for the forest grew into a passion for environmental stewardship. Noah, now a symbol of resilience and hope, shared his story with others, inspiring many with his courage and connection to the natural world. Though the boy who had vanished years ago was forever changed, his spirit was stronger than ever. He carried the forest's legacy in his heart, committed to safeguarding its future. Together, they had transformed tragedy into triumph. The ancient symbols that once guarded the forest's secrets had become a beacon of unity and respect. The community embraced a new beginning, one rooted in harmony with nature and the understanding that some mysteries are meant to protect, teach, and guide. As Mark looked toward the horizon, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The boy who vanished during a hike had not only been found, he had become a guardian, a bridge to a deeper understanding of the world around them. Their story was far from over, but the future was bright, filled with hope, discovery, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The years that followed the discovery of the ancient symbols and the ritual were transformative not only for Noah and his rescuers, but for the entire community that had once mourned his loss. The forest, once seen as a place of danger and mystery, had become a symbol of hope, respect, and renewal. Noah's story inspired a movement, one that connected people deeply with the natural world, reminding them that they were part of something far greater than themselves. Mark stood on the ridge, overlooking the forest where it all began. The gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and earth, and sunlight filtered through the canopy, dappling the ground in golden light. He thought about how much had changed in the last 5 years. What started as a desperate search for a missing boy had evolved into a powerful journey of healing, discovery, and reconnection. Noah, once lost and alone, was now a young man with a purpose to protect the forest that had saved him. Elena's work had reached far beyond their small town. She was invited to speak at conferences, her research on the symbols and the ancient rituals captivating audiences worldwide. Her dedication had helped preserve knowledge that might otherwise have been forgotten, bridging the gap between history and the future. Jake had become a leader in conservation efforts, inspiring others to protect the land and honor the balance between human activity and nature. The patrols he organized kept the forest safe, and education programs helped hikers and locals understand the sacredness of the place. Noah, no longer a lost boy but a guardian of the forest's secrets, worked alongside his rescuers. His connection to the land was profound and unbreakable. He understood the symbols not just as ancient carvings, but as living lessons passed down through generations. He became a voice for the forest, teaching others the importance of listening to nature and respecting its boundaries. Together, they built a sanctuary, a protected area where the forest and its mysteries could thrive untouched by destruction. The community embraced this new chapter, celebrating the bond they shared with the land and with each other. Festivals honoring the ancient guardians were held each year, bringing people together in gratitude and reverence. Mark looked out one last time before turning away, feeling a deep sense of peace. The forest was alive, its secrets safe, and its story continuing through those who cared enough to listen. Noah's disappearance had once shattered hearts, but now it was a story of hope, resilience, and the promise of tomorrow. As they walked back toward the town, Mark knew that the journey was far from over. But one thing was certain: the bond forged between boy, forest, and rescuers was eternal. And as long as that bond remained, the forest would always protect those who honored it. The boy who vanished during a hike was never truly lost. He had simply been waiting for the world to understand. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey, a story of mystery, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and the forest that saved him. This tale reminds us all of the power of hope, the importance of respecting nature, and the miracles that can happen when we listen closely to the world around us. If this story touched you or sparked your curiosity, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Did the story surprise you? What part resonated most with you? Your feedback means the world and helps me bring more amazing stories your way. Together, let's continue exploring the mysteries of our world, one story at a time. Thank you again for watching. Until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.